Right, we're going to be doing teardown, modification, and cleanup. This is a very, very dirty, extremely dirty GameCube. We got big old nasties on there. Go ahead and get our Gamebit driver. And get these 4 screws out of the bottom. Alright, there's our top. God, look at that dust. Oh, oh. Yeah, this is, woof. This is a dirty one. Oh man. Oh, this is getting better by the second. There are 19 screws around the perimeter of the GameCube. 4 in the front, 4 in the back. And 5 on each side. Oh, 18 screws. Oh yeah, this is... And I got rabbits with less freaking hair. Oh man. So you think it's just the plastic that's super dirty? I mean, look at that. That's a whole new level of... Ugh. Look at our screws coming up with... Screws got an afro on it. Most things I'd actually clean like in here and back here, but I'm actually gonna go out to my wood and metal shop and clean this up out there. Mostly just dust and dirt flies. Usually they're not this bad or packed in here. This just lifts off. That's not too bad underneath, but I mean, those vents are... That's a whole fun level of dirt skirsting. The question is, are we going to get lucky? Almost. I wanted all the thermal pads. Bottom of the heatsink. That one just didn't quite make it. There's the board. Pretty much at that point, we're getting disassembly, and we can go take this thing out and get it cleaned up. Yep. So, I'll be back after I get all that blown off. Alright, got this thing mostly cleaned up now. Now I can actually get back to the modification of this thing. And this is the, it's the PICOBoot, what we're doing. And this is a 001 model. But I'm through some flux on our points here. I've had this flux for freaking ever and a day. One thing I did do is I already flashed the firmware onto a Raspberry Pi Pico and got all of these wired up to the correct points. The 3v3, ground, GP4, GP5, and I already have the GP6 and 7 pins jumped or bridged. Different color wires, just so I don't get confused in my process. What we're going to do is just go ahead and get our connections, some fresh solder on them. In here a little bit better so you can see better what I'm doing. So what we're doing is these 2 points need to be bridged together. Need the second one over and then the 4th one in as well. That one. And then up on the chip just above it, the second pin on that side and third one right there. What I like to do is hook up my 3v3 wire. Our little tug test. That is good. Next is the GP5. Just my green wire. That's going to go to the one that's on the second plug in. Not really plug, but second point in. Our ground is our giant blob up here. Usually just try to get that one laying across actually both of those points. Yellow wire is our GP6 7. Which goes to the second point. Towards the side, and this is the third one on the back. Alright, give everything a little bit of a tug test. Happy with all of that. Now, because where I'm going to be mounting this, what I do is the actual drive. I'm going to take this tab right here and I'm going to cut that off. Cut it off a little high. There are other ways to run the wires, but I like running them through where I do that a little bit better. But actually first we're going to get the heatsink back on top of this. She all pushed back up. One of these days I will get a better camera, but for right now, this is what I got. It's not the best, it's not the greatest, it's not the newest, but it works. I will get into one little thing on these about not all GameCubes are created equally. Like I said, this is a 001 model. There's also the 101s. The 101s wires get soldered to this side of the board and to the other side of it, so you actually have to pull the whole thing up and out, which I had to do anyways, pretty much so I can clean the inside of this stupid thing. thing I am going to do first, just because it makes life a little easier, is get our front panel plugged back in. Just, you can get your hands in there right now. Wires coming through our front slot right there that we made. I want to set this back over the top. They fit right through that corner where we broke them off. Another thing too of just have multiple sizes of screwdrivers and flush cutters. Just like these flush cutters work great for you know, cutting down, trimming wire, trimming plastic, things like that. Those other ones I have are more heavy duty. They don't exactly cut some of the thinner plastic and metal as cleanly, but like the thickness of this case, that would dull the heck out of these. Those other ones, they are freaking a champ going through and getting those cut out. If you use a power drill, make sure your clutch is set on 1. It being set on 1, it's going to give up before the plastic does. And a lot of people go at these, they got freaking drills cranked all the way up, or still leave it in drill mode. You can't always get in. And if it starts jumping across the top of the screw, stop. Don't strip the top of your screws out. And a lot of consoles sit in that have screws stripped out, and they are just a pain in the ass sometimes to get those screws out. Especially on the PS5s and Xbox Series X's. There are just so many in there, and they're tight. And this screw I'm putting in right now, put that one in before you put the fan back on. It's the only one that really needs to go back in first before the fan goes on. The rest of these, you can actually get the fan in first. It's these 3 right here, and that one in the back. The fan has to be out to take those out. Alright. So all of our screws. The power wire for the fan slips into that slot right there. I'll show that before. And the fan actually lines up and then slides over and down into place. Doesn't lift up, doesn't do that, it moves sideways. Power button. Back of our case. What we're going to do is cut a small piece of some VHB which is just kind of a universal term for double-sided stick tape, very high bond. And just gonna take that, stick it to the back of our Raspberry Pi Pico. If anybody knows a good way of pulling this backing off of this, aside from what I just did, let me know. Now what I like to do is just stick it about right here to where it's just below this plastic bar, and the USB port is just off to the side. Get that all shoved in. All of our wires sit in there down below. Front panel click back on. And do a little bit more cleaning in there. At that point, the top can go back on, and make sure you flash the firmware onto the Raspberry Pi Pico first. Actually had one of these sent in. Somebody said it wasn't working. This and that. They bought it from somebody else. Literally did nothing but flash the firmware onto the Pico itself, and it fired right up. The first thing I did is to say, I pretty much charge them just shipping. A lot of times, really easy fixes that take like 5 minutes. I'm not really going to charge for the repair, depending on what it is. I mean, these are 4 screws to get inside. There's some things that get sent in, you know, you're removing 40, 50 screws. Try to keep our repair costs simple, down. We're not cheap, but at the same time, we're not super expensive either. And at that, last thing we can do get our SD card in with the SD2PS2. Get that slotted into place. Cover's back on, and aside from just one last wipe down on this thing, maybe a new jewel for the top. We're done, good. And this is ready to go. That's the installation of the PICOBoot into a Gamecube. Didn't go into too much in depth about loading the BIOS and the firmware and all of that. There's plenty of videos out there on that, but just for the install, we're pretty inexpensive on the installs. If you want one installed, you supply the parts, or you can have us supply the parts. Just get a hold of us. Links in the description. Go to the About section. Business inquiries, you'll get our email address in there. But thanks for stopping in. Have a good night.